The distress beacon pulsed weakly through the void of space, a dying heartbeat calling for help that would never come. Dr. Sarah Chin adjusted her scanner as she floated through the abandoned HFY trading station, her boots magnetized to the metal floor. The corridors were dark and silent, filled with the scattered remnants of panicked evacuation. Overturned crates, torn fabric, and strange alien tools littered the ground like forgotten memories. "Medical bay is clear," Sarah reported into her comm unit, her voice echoing in her helmet. "No survivors so far." Her crew aboard the human vessel Wanderer acknowledged with a crackle of static. They had responded to the distress signal 3 hours ago, hoping to find someone alive. Instead, they found only ghosts and silence. Whatever had happened here, the inhabitants had fled in terror. Sarah moved deeper into the station, following a strange reading on her medical scanner. Something was alive here, somewhere in the refuse section. The smell hit her first, even through her suit's filters. A mixture of decay and something else, something alive and suffering. She pushed through a doorway into a massive chamber filled with biological waste and discarded equipment. That was when she saw it. Among the piles of garbage lay a creature unlike anything Sarah had seen before. It was enormous, perhaps 3 meters long, with 6 powerful legs sprawled across the filthy floor. Its fur should have been beautiful. She could see hints of iridescent colors beneath the grime and blood. The creature's body moved in ways that made Sarah's stomach turn. Something was writhing beneath its skin, creating ripples and bulges across its frame. "Captain, I found something," Sarah whispered, kneeling beside the creature. "It's alive, but barely." The creature's eyes opened slowly. They were golden and intelligent, filled with a pain so profound that Sarah felt it in her chest. The beast tried to lift its massive head but collapsed back down with a weak growl. Sarah's scanner beeped urgently, displaying information that made her heart sink. HFY parasites. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, eating the creature from the inside out. The parasites were reproducing faster than the creature's body could fight them. According to her database, there was no cure. Every known species in the galaxy had the same treatment protocol for HFY infestation. Immediate euthanasia to prevent suffering and stop the spread. "Chin, what's your status?" Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through her comm. Sarah hesitated. She looked at the creature again, seeing past the parasites in the pain. A neural implant was embedded near the creature's skull, standard military equipment. She connected her scanner to it and read the identification data. Sentinel-7, it said. A Velrothi war beast, property of the HFY military, classified as a combat unit. Property. Not a soldier. Not even a pet. Just property. "I need to bring it back to the ship," Sarah said finally. The comm exploded with protests. Captain Rodriguez warned her about contamination protocols. Her fellow crew members reminded her that HFY parasites were deadly biohazards. The alien members of the crew sounded terrified, sharing stories of entire colonies consumed by these parasites. But Sarah was not listening anymore. She was looking into those golden eyes, seeing the intelligence behind them, the awareness of its own suffering. The creature knew it was dying. It knew it had been abandoned here like trash. And yet, in those eyes, Sarah saw something else. A tiny spark of hope that perhaps someone, anyone, might care enough to try. "I'm bringing it back," Sarah repeated firmly. "Prepare the medical bay for quarantine." And that's an order. It was not an order, of course. Sarah was a medic, not a commander. But her tone left no room for argument. She activated her emergency medical stretcher and began the careful process of moving the massive creature. Sentinel-7 did not fight her. It simply watched with those intelligent golden eyes as this strange alien in a white suit tried to save a life that everyone else had already given up on. The medical bay doors sealed behind Sarah with a hiss that sounded like a death sentence. Captain Rodriguez stood outside the transparent quarantine barrier, his face red with anger. Behind him, the rest of the crew gathered, their expressions ranging from concern to outright fear. "This is insane, Chin," the captain said through the intercom. "Those parasites could spread through the entire ship. You're risking all our lives for a creature that's already dead." Sarah did not look up from her work. She had placed Sentinel-7 on the largest medical table, which barely held the creature's massive frame. Her scanners hummed as they mapped every parasite inside the beast's body. The numbers were worse than she had feared. Thousands of HFY parasites moved through the creature's organs, consuming tissue and laying more eggs. "I've sealed the medical bay completely," Sarah replied, her hands steady as she prepared her instruments. "Nothing gets in or out without going through sterilization. The ship is safe." Zixanael, the insectoid engineer, pressed closer to the barrier. His multiple eyes blinked in patterns that showed his distress. You don't understand, human. My people watched KRYX parasites destroy an entire moon colony. 40,000 souls died screaming. There is no cure. There has never been a cure. SS Wrath, the reptilian navigator, hissed in agreement. Her forked tongue flickered as she spoke. The ZHKRI are the most advanced medical race in this sector. If they abandon this creature, it is because saving it is impossible. You waste time and endanger us all. Sarah finally looked up at them. Then leave. All of you. Set the ship to maintain orbit and take the escape pods. I'll stay here alone. No one moved. They wanted to leave, she could see it in their faces, but something kept them there. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps they wanted to witness the moment when she finally admitted defeat. Sarah turned back to Sentinel-7. The creature's breathing was shallow and painful. She had never treated a KRYX infestation before, but she had studied Earth's medical history extensively. Humanity had fought parasites for thousands of years. Tapeworms, flukes, malaria, and hundreds of other invaders. Her ancestors had learned to be creative, to attack problems from unexpected angles. She accessed the Galactic Medical Database and read through every treatment attempt ever recorded. Energy weapons that heated the parasites failed because the parasites adapted within hours. Chemical compounds that poisoned them failed because the dosage needed also killed the host. Biological warfare using engineered viruses failed because KRYX parasites had incredibly resilient DNA. Every species had tried to kill the parasites directly. None had succeeded. Sarah thought differently. What if she did not try to kill them all at once? What if she made the host body an unfriendly environment instead? She began mixing compounds from Earth's medical supplies, creating something no alien had ever considered. A combination of antiparasitic drugs, immune system boosters, and modified probiotics from human gut bacteria. The first injection made Sentinel-7 convulse. Sarah held the creature's massive head, whispering words of comfort even though she knew it probably could not understand her language. I know it hurts. I'm sorry. But I'm not giving up on you. For 72 hours, Sarah did not sleep. She performed careful surgeries to remove the largest parasites manually, a procedure so delicate that her hands cramped from the precision required. She monitored every vital sign, adjusting her treatment as the creature's body responded. 3 times Sentinel-7's heart stopped. 3 times Sarah brought it back. The crew watched through the barrier, their protests gradually fading into silence. Zix and AL began fabricating custom surgical tools without being asked, passing them through the sterilization chamber. SS Wrath pulled data from her homeworld's archives about similar parasites, information that helped Sarah refine her approach. On the 4th day, something miraculous happened. Sarah's scanner showed the parasite reproduction rate dropping. Not stopped but slowing. The creature's immune system, supported by her treatment, was finally fighting back. Sentinel-7 opened its golden eyes and looked at Sarah with something that might have been gratitude. For the first time since the rescue, the creature's tail moved slightly, a weak but deliberate gesture. It was working. Against all odds and every prediction, it was actually working. The breakthrough came during Sarah's 9th day without proper sleep. Her eyes burned with exhaustion as she studied the latest scan results, but the data made her heart race with excitement. The parasites were dying. Not quickly but steadily, like a retreating army that had finally met its match. It's the bacteria, she whispered to herself, zooming in on the cellular images. They're competing for the same resources. The modified human gut bacteria she had introduced were doing something remarkable. They were outcompeting the KRYX parasites for nutrients inside Sentinel-7's digestive system. It was such a simple solution that none of the advanced alien species had considered it. Their biology was too different from the parasites to create this kind of competition. But the treatment was far from over. Sarah stood beside the medical table, looking down at Sentinel-7's massive form. The creature watched her with those intelligent golden eyes, and Sarah saw both trust and fear reflected there. This next part is going to hurt, Sarah said softly, placing her hand on the creature's head. I'm sorry. She activated the surgical tools. The largest parasites had to be removed manually, one by one, before they could adapt to her treatment. It was a procedure that her medical database classified as impossible. The parasites moved too fast, burrowed too deep, and caused fatal bleeding when extracted. But Sarah had steady hands and human stubbornness. She made the first incision along Sentinel-7's flank. The creature growled in pain but did not pull away. It understood somehow that this pain was different from the agony of the parasites. This pain had purpose. Outside the quarantine barrier, the crew had stopped demanding that Sarah give up. Now they simply watched in fascinated silence. Zixanael had taken to sleeping in the corridor outside the medical bay, ready to fabricate any tool Sarah needed at a moment's notice. SS Wrath brought food and forced Sarah to eat, passing nutrient packs through the sterilization chamber. Even Captain Rodriguez had softened. He stood at the barrier during Sarah's 16th surgery, watching as she carefully extracted a parasite the size of her forearm from near Sentinel-7's heart. The creature's vital signs spiked dangerously, alarms screaming throughout the bay. "Come on," Sarah muttered, her hands moving with practiced precision. "Stay with me. You're stronger than this." Sentinel-7's heart rate steadied. The creature took a shuddering breath and continued living. 3 weeks into the treatment, Sentinel-7 stood for the first time. Sarah had been changing the creature's bandages when it suddenly pushed itself up on trembling legs. The medical bay was not designed for something so large, but the creature managed to take 3 unsteady steps before collapsing again. Sarah laughed, a sound of pure joy that surprised even her. She had not laughed in weeks. "That's it. Yes, you're doing it." The creature made a sound, something between a purr and a rumble. Through the neural implant, Sarah's computer translated a single concept: gratitude. She connected her tablet to the neural implant more directly, trying to establish better communication. Information flowed through the connection and Sarah learned the truth. The creature's name in its own language meant Guardian of the Lost. It had been a decorated military companion, not just a mindless beast. It had fought beside HFY soldiers, saved lives, shown loyalty beyond measure. And when the parasites came, its handlers had abandoned it. Not because they were cruel, Guardian showed her through fragmented memories, but because they believed death was the only mercy they could offer. Every medical expert had said the same thing: there is no cure, only suffering. Guardian had been left in that garbage chamber to die alone, discarded like broken equipment. Sarah felt tears running down her cheeks. She pressed her forehead against Guardian's massive skull. "I'm glad they were wrong," she whispered. "I'm glad I found you." Guardian's tail wrapped gently around Sarah's waist, a gesture of affection and trust. Through the neural link, Sarah felt the creature's emotions: relief, hope, and something deeper. A bond forming between two beings who should never have met, saved by human stubbornness and the simple refusal to accept that some lives were not worth saving. 5 weeks after the rescue, Guardian took its first walk through the Wanderer's corridors without assistance. The crew had gathered to watch, their faces showing a mixture of wonder and disbelief. The creature that had been dying in a pile of garbage now moved with grace and power, its iridescent fur gleaming under the ship's lights like liquid starlight. Sarah walked beside Guardian, one hand resting on the creature's shoulder. She barely reached its back, but the massive beast adjusted its pace to match hers perfectly. They moved through the engineering section where Zixanael worked on the ship's systems. The insectoid engineer stopped his work and approached slowly. He had been the most vocal opponent of Guardian's presence, the one who had shared horror stories of parasite infestations. Now he extended one of his delicate appendages toward the creature. Guardian lowered its head, allowing Zixanael to touch the fur between its ears. The engineer's mandibles clicked in a pattern that his translator rendered as amazement. "I was wrong," he said simply. "Forgive me, Guardian of the Lost. I judged you before knowing you." Guardian rumbled softly, a sound of acceptance. Through the neural implant connected to Sarah's tablet, a simple message appeared: "Fear is not wrong. Understanding comes after." The news of Guardian's recovery had spread across the sector like wildfire. Sarah's communication console filled with hundreds of messages daily. Xenobiologists wanted to study the creature. Medical researchers demanded access to her treatment data. Some messages were hostile, accusing her of violating quarantine protocols and risking galactic safety for sentiment. The most persistent messages came from the HFY military. They wanted their property returned immediately. Captain Rodriguez sat across from Sarah in the mess hall, reading through the latest legal documents. They're claiming Guardian is military equipment, technically stolen goods. They're threatening to file charges with the Galactic Council. Sarah's jaw tightened. Guardian is not property. Guardian is a person. "I agree with you," Rodriguez said quietly. "But the law doesn't, not yet. The HFY have ownership documentation going back 15 years. Guardian, who had been resting in the corner, rose and approached them. The creature had been learning to use the neural implant more effectively, typing messages through Sarah's tablet with surprising speed. Words appeared on the screen: "I can show you truth. Connect deeper. Warning, memories are painful. Sarah exchanged glances with the captain, then nodded. She adjusted the neural link to allow full memory sharing. What she saw made her sick. Guardian's memories flooded through the connection. Not just recent memories but years of service. The creature showed her battlefields where Velrothi war beasts were sent into parasite-infested zones deliberately. The HFY commanders knew these areas were dangerous, knew the creatures would likely become infected. But Velrothi were considered cheaper than soldiers, easier to replace than losing trained personnel. Guardian showed her dozens of other Velrothi, all abandoned after becoming infected. Some were left to die alone like Guardian. Others were simply executed when treatment became inconvenient. The memories showed HFY handlers who genuinely cared for their beasts, weeping as they followed orders to dispose of infected creatures. But the military policy was clear: Velrothi were tools, not lives worth extensive medical resources. Sarah disconnected from the link, breathing hard. Captain Rodriguez had gone pale, having witnessed the memories through her shared screen. "This is systematic," he said. "This isn't isolated incidents. This is policy." Guardian typed again, "Many others still suffer. I can feel them across the stars. My kind share weak connection. Dozens dying right now, alone and afraid." Sarah stood up, her exhaustion forgotten. "We need to make the treatment public. Every doctor, every medical facility needs access to the Guardian protocol. Pharmaceutical companies will want to buy exclusive rights," Rodriguez warned. "The patent alone could make you wealthy beyond imagination." Sarah looked at Guardian, remembering those golden eyes in the garbage chamber, filled with pain and abandoned hope. "Then they'll be disappointed. This goes out free to everyone immediately. No creature should die alone because someone decided their life wasn't worth the cost of treatment." Guardian's tail swished, a gesture Sarah had learned meant approval and affection. Sarah stood in the Wanderer's communication center, her finger hovering over the transmission button. The file was ready, every detail of the Guardian protocol, every technique she had developed, every modification that had saved Guardian's life. Once she pressed this button, the information would broadcast across the entire galactic network, free for anyone to access. "Are you sure about this?" Captain Rodriguez asked from behind her. "Last chance to change your mind. 3 pharmaceutical corporations have offered you enough credits to buy your own planet." Sarah thought about Guardian standing tall and healthy in the cargo bay below. She thought about the dozens of other Velrothi suffering across the stars, dying alone in the dark because their lives were deemed not worth saving. She pressed the button. "The Guardian protocol is now public domain," she said simply. Within hours the response was explosive. Medical facilities across a dozen systems began downloading the protocol. But not everyone celebrated. The HFY military filed formal protests. A group of human politicians called Sarah reckless, claiming she was making humanity look weak and overly emotional. Conservative factions across multiple species accused her of dangerous sentimentality that would undermine military efficiency. But other voices rose louder. A young HFY doctor sent a message saying she had already used the protocol to save a dying Velrothi. A human medical student on Mars called Sarah his hero. Advocacy groups for sentient rights began citing Guardian's case as proof that current laws needed to change. Guardian spent those first days after the announcement using the neural implant to locate others of its kind. The Velrothi shared a weak psychic connection across space, something their handlers had never fully understood. Guardian could feel them, dying, suffering, abandoned. Each location burned in the creature's mind like a distant star crying for help. "There," Guardian typed, displaying coordinates on the navigation screen. 3 Velrothi on mining station. Very sick. Days left, maybe hours. Captain Rodriguez studied the coordinates and made a decision that surprised even himself. Set course. Full speed. The Wanderer arrived at the mining station to find it abandoned except for 3 Velrothi locked in a storage bay. They were in worse condition than Guardian had been, their bodies ravaged by parasites and starvation. Sarah worked for 36 hours straight, implementing the Guardian protocol with desperate speed. All 3 survived. Word spread. More ships contacted them with coordinates of abandoned war beasts. The Wanderer could not respond to all the calls, but other ships began to help. Human medical vessels, some alien doctors willing to try the new protocol, even civilian volunteers started organizing rescue missions. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the bridge of a new vessel, the Guardian's Promise, funded by donations from across human space and even some sympathetic alien systems. The ship was designed specifically for rescue and treatment, with medical bays that could handle the largest creatures and quarantine systems that satisfied even the strictest safety protocols. Guardian stood beside her, no longer alone. 12 other Velrothi now lived on the ship, all rescued and healed. They had chosen to stay, working with the human crew as partners. Some helped locate others in need. Some learned basic medical assistance. All of them had made the same choice, to help save those who had been abandoned as they once were. The Galactic Council had called a special session to address the controversy. Sarah received a formal summons to testify about the ethics of treating military resources, and whether beings created for service could be considered truly sentient. She looked at Guardian, who met her gaze with those intelligent golden eyes. Through the neural link, Guardian shared a simple thought: we go together. We show them truth. Sarah smiled. Together. The Guardian's promise set course for the Council homeworld, but not before making one more stop, a derelict space station where Guardian sensed 2 more Velrothi waiting in the dark. There was always one more life to save, one more abandoned creature who deserved a chance. And Sarah Chin, the human medic who refused to accept that some lives were disposable, would keep fighting until every last one was free. The mission had only just begun.